Hi and welcome back to Ghosts of the Webway. So today is going to be the first in a several part series where I go over every unit in the Harlequins Codex as requested by none other than the fancy Archon himself, Skari. So we're going to split this into three different sections. The first part is going to be the lore. The second part is going to be where I go over the rules and the characteristics of each unit. And the third part is going to be some combos and different ways in which you could use that unit. So let's begin with the lore. So Troupe Masters are the choreographers of war. They are the leaders in some ways of their troop. They can be leaders of just a single troop or of the entire mask. And they can be separated into the role that they like to play. So I may have talked about Harlequins as clowns in another video. They're not really clowns, they're thespians. They're travelling performers. And the Troupe Masters are like the star role in those performances. So Harlequins often divide themselves into three different groups. There are players of the light, players of the dark, and players of twilight. So players of the light prefer to attack on the front lines. They want to be these heroic, speaking with their deeds kind of performers who want to usually take on a role of some hero from Eldari lore. The players of the dark, on the other hand, are more like vindictive, really nasty characters who want to flamboyantly disembowel their opponents and make a real spectacle out of their death. And then the players of the Twilight are more kind of the obsessive, very strategic, tactical troops who prefer to kind of think a lot about what they're going to do before they do it. So that's a little bit about the lore. Now, let's move on to their profile. So, a Troupe Master has the profile. They have an 8-inch movement, 2+ weapon skill, 2+ ballistic skill, strength 3, toughness 3, 5 wounds, 5 attacks, leadership 9, and a 6+ save. So a fairly standard sort of stat line for any Eldari character. 5 attacks, 5 wounds is pretty good, fairly high leadership, strength 3 and toughness 3, pretty normal for anything other than maybe a Phoenix Lord and Drazar, who is a Phoenix Lord, and a 6+ save, which doesn't sound so good, but we'll see later why that doesn't really matter. So a Troupe Master is a single model armed with a shuriken pistol, Harlequin's blade, and plasma grenades. So we'll look into those as options. The shuriken pistol, first of all, it has a 12-inch range, it's pistol 1, strength 4, 0 AP, damage 1, but each time that you make a wound roll of a 6+, then that hit is resolved with an AP of -3. So it's not a terrible weapon. And the Harlequin's blade is, it doesn't do anything. It's basically a melee weapon, it's strength user, it has no AP, it does 1 damage. It's like having any melee weapon that you could possibly have. Pretty much like a Space Marine's fist, which is a shame, but it's free. Both of those weapons are free. So if you want to keep your Troupe Master very, very cheap, you don't have to upgrade them, and that's what they come with. But this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. So the model may replace its shuriken pistol with a neuro disruptor or a fusion pistol. So let's have a look at those. The fusion pistol has a range of 6 inches, so very short range. It's type pistol 1, its strength 8, -4 AP, and does D6 damage. And the ability is that if the target is within half range of this weapon, roll 2 dice when inflicting damage with it and discard the lowest result. This is pretty strong. And I'm not going to go into the points cost, but they're not too expensive. So if you want to think about giving your Troupe Master the ability to really damage vehicles and characters as well, Fusion Pistol is probably a pretty good option. Then we have the Neuro Disruptor. This has a range of 12 inches, so double the range of a fusion pistol, but the same as a shuriken pistol. It's also pistol 1, has strength 4, -3 AP, and does D3 damage. But if the target is a vehicle, then this weapon has a damage of 1. Now, Neurodisruptors at the moment are more expensive points-wise than fusion pistols. Honestly, I think it's probably just an oversight. It means that we were forgotten about. I'm hoping that's going to change in Chapter Approved. I think if they were about 3 points instead of what they are now, they could have a nice little niche, particularly against multi-wound targets. But as it stands, they are pretty weak. So I would recommend either just keeping the standard shuriken pistol, which keeps it nice and cheap, or adding a fusion pistol, particularly with that BS2+. Yeah, it's a good weapon to have on him. Now, the model may replace its Harlequin's Blade with a Power Sword, Harlequin's Embrace, Harlequin's Kiss, or Harlequin's Caress. This is where it gets very interesting. So let's look at the Power Sword. It's a melee weapon, strength user, -3 AP and damage 1. It's the cheapest upgrade that you can give him. And -3 AP is pretty good, but strength 3 on the user it doesn't give you that many options. You might want to take it if you're facing something like Incubi, or if you want to give him a particular relic. If you're using him as Yanari, for example, and you want to give him the Hungering Blade relic, or there is a Power Sword relic as well for the Harlequins, but honestly, I don't think it's the best option that you can give a Troupe Master, unless you've got like 4 points over, and why not? Then there's always the difficulty of deciding between a Harlequin's Embrace, a Harlequin's Kiss, or a Harlequin's Caress. So a Harlequin's Embrace is also a melee weapon. It gives you +1 strength, -3 AP, and 1 damage. So it's exactly the same as a Power Sword, but it gives you that +1 strength for a couple of points more. This starts to get more interesting. So think about things like Terminators, other reasonable toughness units with a good armor save. It can do some damage, it's not bad. But the main choice that most people have to make is between the Kiss and the Caress. A lot of people like the Caress, particularly against hordes. Now let's look at that. So it's strength +2, so he now starts at strength 5 with a -2 AP and 1 damage. This can be a really powerful weapon. Very, very powerful weapon. And particularly against those low toughness units, with maybe a bit of armor, it can be a real killer. So remember, you've got those 5 attacks as well, so it can be very effective against that sort of thing. But now, to finish, we'll go with the Harlequin's Kiss. Now this is my favourite, as you can kind of see here. I have equipped my Troupe Master here with a Harlequin's Kiss. And it's a melee weapon again, with strength +1, -1 AP, and D3 damage. So, why is it my favourite? Well, it's the D3 damage. +1 strength you get from the Embrace and isn't as good as a Caress. -1 AP isn't really as good as either, but the D3 damage can be really, really good. So if you only had 1 attack with this weapon, it would be mediocre at best. But because he's got 5 attacks, which you can also up to more, I actually find this a really useful weapon for him. Because that D3, over the course of a few different attacks, that starts to add up, and it modifies that randomness that the D3 gives you. So you're averaging out at about 2 damage each. And 2 damage weapons, as we know, can be really useful against things like Primaris or characters. You just have to get through that save. But I like to flood a character with lots and lots of different attacks and hope that they're going to fail a couple of those saves. So those are the weapons, and as stated, they have plasma grenades, so they're 6-inch range, grenade D6, strength 4, -1 AP, and damage 1. Pretty good. If you're in range and you've taken the shuriken pistol, just chuck a grenade instead. Why not? Keeps them nice and cheap, and it can do a little bit of extra damage. Now his abilities. He's got, first of all, Rising Crescendo. Rising Crescendo is an amazing rule that pretty much all Harlequins have except their transports. This model can advance and charge in the same turn. In addition, it can fall back and still shoot and or charge in the same turn. This makes Troupe Masters really annoying because they're very difficult to pin down. So unless you have something like Witches with a Shardnet and Impaler or something else that can trap you in combat, you can't really pin down a Troupe Master. You have to kill him in one, or he's going to go off and run off and do whatever he wants, which is really fun and very useful. Then he has the flip belts. This model can move across models and terrain as if they were not there. This got FAQ'd a while back and then re-FAQ'd. So there have been a couple of issues with this rule. It's changed a few times, but it is really useful. It's like everything that everyone else has to do are rules that we ignore because we're all acrobatic and jump around the place and don't care. However, you can't move across buildings, and that is worth noting. Next, he has a hollow suit. So he has a 4+ invulnerable save. That's why you don't need the 6+. 6+ save, useless. 4+ invulnerable save, very good. Last but not least is the reason why you want to take a Troupe Master. Choreographer of War. In the fight phase, re-roll failed wound rolls for friendly mask units that are within 6 inches of this model. Re-roll failed wound rolls. That's all failed wound rolls. This is a really, really good aura. Really good aura. Like for re-rolling wounds, most people have to pay relics, or they might get like re-roll wounds of 1, even with the relic. But this guy has it base, you know? And this is why I quite like the kiss on him, because that strength 4 suddenly becomes a lot more effective if you can re-roll all of those wounds. And obviously the aura affects the Troupe Master himself. So that's the profile of the Troupe Master. Let's move on to the combinations that I would recommend, or maybe some ideas to give you for competitive play. So let's go over the last part of this video, the combos that you could use with your Troupe Master. So the first combo I'm going to talk about is a pretty famous one, a pretty standard one in competitive play. You use the Mask of the Soaring Spite, give him the Warlord trait so that he can disembark after a transport has moved, and then you give him the relic, the Star Mist Raiment, meaning that he's got a 3-up invuln save against ranged weaponry, and if he advances, then you cannot fire Overwatch against him. This is a really powerful combo, and I do understand why people use it. It can shut down gunline armies very quickly, and that protects the rest of your army from you know, that kind of shooting army. Things like Tau, Imperial Guard, they hate stuff like this. So I can understand why you use it. The only thing that I don't like about it is that you are basically putting your Warlord right on the front line. And it means that your opponent is probably going to get Warlord kill in turn 1 or 2. Either with a counter charge to stomp all over him, or just by falling back and shooting him. And I'm not 100% sure this is the best way to run a Troupe Master. I think it's a way, I think it's a very good way, but I don't think it's the best. So the second combo, and what I tend to use most often, is to put him in the Mask of the Frozen Stars. Now this is a very killy option. You can, it just gives him 1 extra attack, so he's now on 6 attacks on the charge, and you can equip him how you want to, and you can use the stratagem from the Frozen Stars, if you need to give him +1 to wound in combat. It's pretty good. On top of that, if you want to, you can give him the stratagem, the Great Harlequin. So this allows him to reroll 1s to hit as well as all wound rolls. Now I'm pretty sure it is both. I've looked through the FAQ, I've looked through the Codex, everywhere it says he gains the ability. So I've seen some people say that it replaces the Choreographer of War ability. I can't see it. I haven't seen it anywhere. So if you find a reference for that, or if you know that I'm wrong, then you know I'm perfectly happy to admit it. But then tell me, where are you reading this? Because the way that I read it is that he gains the ability, which means that he rerolls hits of 1 and he rerolls all of his wounds. Same goes for anything within 6 inches of him. And then you pop him in a transport with a bunch of troops. Done. Easy. I think it's a pretty good combo. Gives him the killing power that he needs whilst not investing too much in him. I don't think he needs a warlord trait either, but that's just how it is. If you wanted to, you could do something like the Player of the Dark or the Player of the Light to give him some extra killing power or to make sure he gets into combat. But, you know, I like him pretty bare bones in that respect. Just give him the equipment and give him the extra attack and send him off character hunting. The third one is more to maximize your buffs. So here you take the Silent Shroud, which already gives you a -1 leadership bubble. Then on top of that, you do take the Great Harlequin. You still have your Choreographer of War, pretty sure of that, and you take the Player of Light Warlord trait, which allows units around you to reroll their charge distance. So that's a lot of auras. And then you give him the Silent Shroud Relic, which adds 3 inches to all of those aura abilities. Pretty good, right? So within 9 inches of this one Troupe Master, everything starts being able to re-roll their hits of 1 and re-roll their wounds and re-roll their charges and all the rest. It's a really nice way of maximizing everything with, like, let's say a big unit of troops or a group of jet bikes or whatever it is that you're running alongside him. And that's it. Those are my 3 combos. If you have any others, then please, you know, put them down in the comments below. This is a platform for sharing stuff. I'm not the expert. I'm just here to give you my views, my feedback on what I think about the Codex and the units. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. It should be the first of many more. So next week I'll be coming back with the Shadow Seer. So I've been Kit, this has been Ghosts of the Webway, and if you've liked this, then please like my video, subscribe, share it with all of your Harlequins friends, and help me to make this the base for Harlequins players worldwide. Thank you very much, and Kit out!